Hi, and welcome to Full Moon Film Buff, episode 41. We're going to talk about Blood from 1973. I watched this on YouTube. I had not seen this before. Let's discuss the prominent crew and cast. This film was written and directed by Andy Milligan, with effects makeup by Ted Donovan, billed as Ted Donovan. The indomitable Andy Milligan did 5 jobs again on this movie, using the same alias as he did on his last werewolf film to disguise how much of this was actually him. Like his last film, Milligan got an effects makeup artist who did exactly one movie. This time, his name is Ted Donovan. The cast includes Alan Berendt as Lawrence Orlovsky, Hope Stansbury as Regina Orlovsky, Patricia Gall as Carrie, billed as Patty Gall, Michael Fischetti as Orlando, Picciolina Hempe as Carlotta, John Wallowich as Carl Root, Pamela Adams as Prudence Towers, Martin Raymert as Mr. Markham, David Bevins as Jimmy, and Eve Crosby as Petra. Hope Stansbury is back and was a frequent collaborator of Milligan's. This film kicked off a 40-year career for Patricia Gall, although she did a lot more TV shows than movies. A weird tidbit about Martin Raymart is that the only 2 movies he ever appeared in are Blood and Legacy of Blood, which has no relationship to the movie Blood. Several episodes ago, I panned Andy Milligan's first werewolf movie. I'm here to tell you his second attempt is better. Not good by any stretch, but much, much better. The filmmaking still struggles with the same failures in shot composition, lighting, editing, cinematography, but the story has so much more boldness. If The Rats Are Coming, The Werewolves Are Already Here had one interesting idea that was stretched out over 90 minutes of runtime, Blood packs a lot more interesting ideas, bonkers ideas, into its 70-minute runtime. One little tidbit, the house that Lawrence Orlovsky, aka Talbot, rents is the actual home of Andy Milligan. So he was doing work from home filmmaking 50 years ago. Let's cover the synopsis. In the late 19th century, Dr. Lawrence Orlovsky arrives at a house somewhere in Staten Island, New York City, with realtor Mr. Markham. A stern, well-dressed, somewhat rude man, Lawrence tells Markham a few minutes in the sun would kill his wife due to skin pigmentation issues. After signing the papers and forcing Markham to leave, Lawrence lets in his servants, made up of his legless manservant Orlando, the mentally challenged Carlotta, and the limping Carrie. Lawrence's wife Regina is brought into the house, covered in a cloak and suffering from burns. She is revealed to be a vampire. Regina needs daily injections of blood to survive and to heal from her wounds. Sometime later, Orlando and Carrie discuss their mutual love, caring for Regina, and the plants stored in the basement. Lawrence talks about meeting Carl Root, a lawyer handling the Orlovskys' finances. Regina worries about moving to New York from Europe. Regina and Carrie do not get along at all because Carrie is tired of Regina's frequent verbal abuse. Regina treats Carrie like a slave instead of Lawrence's lab assistant. After dinner, Carrie talks with Lawrence about Regina's behavior and Carrie's injury to her right leg sustained while caring for the plants. Lawrence confirms that she might lose the leg. Carrie ventures to the basement where Orlando and Carlotta tend to the flesh-eating plants. Orlando injects Carrie to counter the infection in her leg. While getting into bed, Regina and Lawrence argue about finances and about being different from others. Regina asks Lawrence to make love to her, but he's not in the mood. She accuses him of wanting to sleep with Carrie. She tells Lawrence to go to hell. He very dispassionately asserts they are already there. I feel you, brother. Turns out the team uses Carlotta primarily as a blood bag to feed the plants and perhaps to feed Regina. They discuss finding another developmentally delayed child from an orphanage to supplement Charlotte's blood. Tark! Orlando accidentally gets too close to the plants and is violently attacked. The next day, Lawrence goes to the crooked lawyer Carl Root's office. He meets Prudence Towers, Mr. Root's secretary, and the attraction between them is evident. Lawrence flirts. She flirts back. Lawrence begins recruiting her as an informant against her boss. Mr. Root appears and ushers Lawrence into his office. Lawrence complains about the decreasing money from his late father's estate. It is revealed that Lawrence's real last name is actually Talbot. Mr. Root has been blackmailing Lawrence for protection money to hide this fact. Arguing about the funds, Mr. Root reveals he sold Lawrence's father's house in Moravia and pocketed most of the money. Furious, Lawrence assaults Root, then flees when Prudence comes to her boss's defense. At the house, Carrie's younger brother Jimmy arrives for a visit after tracking her down. Carrie is happy to see her brother for the first time in years, but is nervous about his presence. Oh, and they kiss in a very non-sibling way. Noticing Carrie's limp, he sees the strange gangrene infection on Carrie's leg and is angry. Johnny wants to learn more about Lawrence. Carrie becomes frightened and tells him to leave. Johnny pretends to leave, but Regina sees him. She lures him upstairs and asks Johnny questions about himself and his connection to Carrie. When Johnny threatens to go to the police with information about his sister and her work, Regina murders him with a butcher's knife to the head. Then she drinks his blood. She disposes of the body by dissolving it in a bathtub with sulfuric acid that she just happens to have lying around. Sometime later, Mr. Markham arrives at the Orlovsky house, where an elderly neighbor informs him of disturbing incidents that she has witnessed. Most of the chickens she keeps in her backyard have disappeared, and she expresses suspicion about the Orlovskys. Markham lets himself into the house when no one answers his knock and ventures down to the basement. Carrie and Orlando try to persuade him to leave. When Markham refuses and expresses suspicion about the strange-looking plants in the basement, Carrie and Orlando murder him by knocking him out with a shovel and feeding him to the plants. Despite feeding on Johnny, Regina is still hungry. She feeds on a mouse caught in a spring trap. Somebody check with the SPCA. I think they actually killed a mouse making this movie. Lawrence and Prudence go to the cemetery where Lawrence's father is buried. He wants to know more about his father. His father was researching a cure for his affliction. He shares the affliction as well, which is passed down by bloodline. Prudence tells Lawrence that Mr. Root has been stealing money from Mr. Talbert's accounts. Lawrence wants to go somewhere with Prudence to discuss his feelings towards her, but she refuses. Lawrence tells Prudence that his father and Regina's father arranged their marriage years earlier. Lawrence tried, but could not bring himself to love Regina, and now only feels contempt for her. As they walk out of the cemetery, Lawrence kisses Prudence. They are confronted by a hideous old woman named Petra, who is the caretaker of the cemetery. Suspicious about Lawrence, Petra drives him away and forces Prudence to stay with her because tonight is the full moon. Lawrence returns home, transformed into a werewolf, and attacks the servants. Carrie, Orlando, and Carlotta subdue him with an injection. Returned to human form, Lawrence learns about Mr. Markham's visit. Carrie and Orlando show him the plants slowly devouring Markham's dead body. They insist the plants need more blood. We finally get to see Carrie's wounded leg, and it is gnarly. Lawrence lances a boil, and it is gross. Mr. Root arrives at Prudence's house. He asks her about Lawrence Orlovsky and what they talked about. Prudence tells Mr. Root she is aware he has been embezzling money from clients and quits, revealing she plans to move to Canada to live with her sister. Root tries to persuade her to stay with a pitiful raise. Prudence throws him out. Good for her. Lawrence, in his werewolf form, attacks and kills Root while he's walking home alone in the dark. The next day, Petra arrives at the Orlovsky house. Regina lets her in. Petra reveals that she knows Lawrence's real name. He is the son of the werewolf Lawrence Talbert Sr. When Petra exposes Lawrence and Prudence meeting in the cemetery, Regina murders Petra. Regina reveals that she is the daughter of Count Dracula. Regina goes to Prudence's house and kills her too as she sleeps by drinking her blood. Lawrence returns to the house in human form and plans to leave immediately. He orders Orlando, Carrie, and Carlotta to begin packing and destroying the plants. Regina arrives home revealing that she just killed Prudence. Finally, reaching his breaking point, Lawrence transforms into his werewolf form and attacks Regina, who transforms into her true vampire form. As Orlando and Carrie begin to set the carnivorous plants on fire, Regina runs down into the basement and attacks the servants. Werewolf Lawrence continues to attack her as the fire gets out of control and spreads all over the basement. Lawrence, Regina, Orlando, Carrie, Carlotta, and all of the plants are consumed by the flames. Sometimes later, the vacant and damaged house is sold. A couple arrives at the house with another real estate agent named Mr. Sharp to sign the papers to transfer ownership of the house into their name. The young man claims that he is a doctor looking to settle and continue his experiments. The doctor signs his name as Baron von Frankenstein. The transformation scenes are the big area where this movie took a step back from Milligan's previous movie. All the transformation scenes happen off camera, and are just covered by reaction shots. The makeup jobs are not great. In a couple of the scenes, it almost looks like they just darkened up the actor's skin. That could be an effect of watching a bad copy of the film, but I wasn't impressed. There's almost no werewolf lore in this movie. Obviously, they're riding on Universal's coattails, but they're vague about everything. They mention the full moon, but then Lawrence transforms in the day or night based on his emotional state. He can be temporarily cured with an injection of something. They never tell us what. And there's no mention of silver as a weakness. It's just a mess. Not the best part of the film. The only thing I could really find in this movie worth talking about is the bizarre arranged marriage between Lawrence Talbot Jr. and Regina Dracula. Regina seems like such a millstone around Lawrence's neck. The experiments with the flesh-eating plants seem to be all about her vampiric condition. It is mentioned that Lawrence's father was working on a cure for the werewolf condition, but that seems to have been entirely dropped in favor of trying to deal with Regina's vampirism. Honestly, I cannot think of a single redeeming quality of Regina's. She's childish, jealous, petulant, manipulative, sadistic, violent. Andy Milligan was a self-described misogynist. He didn't like women. And it's easy to see in this movie. This movie is most easily read as a disintegrating marriage finally reaching its breaking point. A violent, murderous breaking point. Yeah, it's on that level, it's pretty funny, and there are some amusing bits. So if you like lycanthropes, like, share, and subscribe. Please share your thoughts and observations in the comments below. Let me know what I missed and what you may have spotted. Next, I plan on discussing Curse of the Devil from 1973. So keep your eye on the moon, silver bullet in the chamber, and we'll see you back here next time.